How should you be pricing in 2026? In this episode, I want to talk to you about the findings from our survey, which we prepared in partnership with Go Proposal. We've been researching how bookkeepers are pricing their services, and we got some really interesting insights in this. And I'm just going to give you a bit of a sneak preview. This isn't about the price that you charge. This is about the confidence that you have in yourself and the belief that you have in your value. Welcome to the Bookkeepers podcast, sponsored by Xero. So we've been running this survey for the last 4 years or so. And I can remember when we first surveyed our community, we learnt, and Jo and I quote this regularly when we're on stage and talking about pricing, we found that the minimum hourly rate was £25 an hour. That was pretty standard in the sort of early 2020s. And it was a price that Jo and I have both charged in business as well, years before. And what we really observed from that learning was that we're not adjusting our prices enough. You know, if you think about the things that have happened between the sort of, let's say 2015 and 2022, there will have been inflation. We went through a whole pandemic. The economy changed, but pricing hadn't changed to reflect that. And we wondered why this was. And we've been beating this drum for years now about fixed pricing, hourly rates not really being the appropriate way to price services, and why that's so important. I'm going to talk about that a lot more today. But we couldn't work out why people were stuck at this price. It's like that £25 an hour had a ceiling. And this year we asked the question, you know, is it even really about the price? Is there actually something else that's happening here that's stopping people from pricing appropriately? And let's talk about what appropriate actually means in terms of these services, because I think that there's something much, much deeper here that's going on. And I think what this really comes down to is our own perception of the value of bookkeeping. And when I say value, I'm not just talking about our own thoughts about what this service does, the list of things that we're providing. We're talking about the outcomes that we're giving to our clients. And a real focus for me in 2026, personally, is to share through this podcast ways that you can move from being seen as an admin role into somebody who is leading the finance function. Because I really think that this, based on those survey results, is really the key to how you open up your pricing to make sure that you are running a commercial business, because that's what you do. So the hourly rate, let's just talk about why this is not the way to be pricing right now. When you do the maths on this, if you start looking at what happens if I charge £25 an hour, ultimately what it comes down to is, yes, you charge you £25 an hour, but then of course you pay your costs of running your business. We've all got fixed costs to be in business. The foundational things are your practicing license, your insurance, the systems that you run the business on. There might be software costs for the clients as well. And you get this sort of level of variable costs as well as your business grows and you support more clients. But also when you get to that figure and you're looking at your profit, you have to pay tax on that. So the money that you take away from your business, it's never going to be £25 an hour. And I think when you go out and have a look at how you might be paid in an employed role, you'll have a better understanding of what you need to do to the hourly rate so that you can price appropriately for all of those costs and taxes that you're going to need to be paid. When you're paid by a salary, and I think many of us, maybe many of you listening to this podcast are listening to this because you're thinking, I want to be self-employed, or I need to earn more as being self-employed. But you've got that kind of bar, that level benchmark of having been employed before, because we know we support lots of bookkeepers who have been in employed roles before. You're always thinking about the salary that you were earning or the salary you could be earning, and then looking at what that hourly rate will be. And I'll be really honest here. When I started a bookkeeping practice in 2016, I looked at the salary that I was earning in my employed job. I was working in a large bank in an insurance finance function, doing something very different to bookkeeping for small businesses. And I immediately thought, well, I'm going to be working from home around my kids. I want flexibility. I'm not going to be seen as professional as a high street accountancy practice. So I can't charge as much as a practice on the high street. And I immediately devalued myself before I'd even started. And I don't want you to make that mistake because, you know, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And I think sometimes it's useful for someone just to call out, look, there are other elements here. When you're self-employed, you're not somebody who is delivering a service in exchange for an hour of your time. So it's not like, here's an hour of bookkeeping, pay me £25. What you're actually doing is running a business, and whether you want to scale that business and maybe get support in the future or not, because it's absolutely fine if you want to keep a business just as you need to be aware that you are a commercial entity. A business is something that creates value for others and is paid appropriately for that value. And we need to be aware of that, whatever size, whatever age your business is, whatever level of services you're offering, there needs to be an exchange, and this needs to be worthwhile. So pricing isn't really about numbers at all. It's about the service you're providing, your identity, as in yourself, like the beliefs that you have about yourself and the value you can give, the expertise that you're sharing with your clients, and the outcome that you're creating for them. And I think that when it comes to pricing, we're so, shut off maybe from the side that the client sees. And if we can turn this around and start thinking about pricing as an exchange of value for something that they're going to receive, we start to see the services that we're providing in a different light. And that's the kind of stuff that gives us confidence. So much of what we learn in this report, which you can download, and there's a link underneath this video, underneath this podcast if you're listening to the audio. So much of this report isn't about the numbers. Of course, it's based on the numbers, but we ask lots of questions about confidence as well. Confidence of winning the client work. And we saw really interesting trends actually in terms of whether people were had spent longer in business, or whether they were using certain software like GoProposal to support them with building their pricing structure, that were giving them elements of confidence. I think so often we think confidence is something you're just like born with, or something you need to get better at. Actually, there are systems and frameworks and tools that can help you to be more confident. And if you can start to see that you are providing a great outcome for your client, I think you'll start to, hopefully at the end of this episode, feel more confident in what it is that you're going out there to deliver. So let me tell you about the survey. This year, we surveyed our community in the Six Figure Bookkeepers Club. Some of the people who responded were members of our program, the Bookkeepers Collective. Others were just part of our free Facebook community, which you're welcome to join if you haven't already. And we had 145 responses from around the world. 131 of those were UK bookkeepers. So I'm going to focus on the UK only people so that we've got this sort of fair benchmark, because obviously I know that services are priced differently around the world as well. On the surface, the headline figures were good. So we spoke about that hourly rate that we couldn't get past, that ceiling we couldn't get past of £25 an hour. What we learned this time is that the median hourly rate for bookkeeping looks like it's about £33 an hour, which feels good. The mean hourly rate, £35.67, also feels good. And when you start to factor in those costs and the taxes that you're going to be paying and the infrastructure around the business you're building, that feels like a massive improvement, which is brilliant. But we're still seeing this real lack of confidence, which is why we need to talk about this so much more today. And we've got to talk about that commerciality, okay? We're running a commercial business and we're operating in an economy which is different to an economy 10 years ago. We are right now going into 2026. We know that there's quite a lot of business uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, business owners start to think about the costs of things that are running through their business, just in the same way that you are when you're making decisions about the tools and the software and the way that you run your business as well. So they will be looking through at the expenses that they have, their overheads, and deciding, is this actually something that I want to be continuing with? And that's why you understanding, feeling confident in, and being able to express the value of what you're providing, the outcomes that you're giving to the client, is so important. And I think that's why we've got to move away from the hourly rate. Now, we all have deep set beliefs about money, don't we? We're probably brought up with messaging around, I remember in my family, it was things about money didn't grow on trees. Or you might have had experiences growing up which have really shaped your beliefs around money. I've mentioned before in an episode of the Bookkeepers podcast, I was told by my grandmother once, never a lender or borrower be. And I think that's really shaped my attitude to risk and the way that I should manage personal finances. And of course, if you've got those kind of beliefs, they also feed into the way that you decide to run a business. But this isn't just about how you feel about money. This is also about how your clients feel about money. So when we're going into an economy, which, let's be fair, has been around for a while right now, you know, businesses are cutting back, they're feeling uncertainty, prices of their inputs are going up. So they're going to be looking at, what they're spending. They need to make decisions based on real trust and belief that the things they're investing in are going to be worthwhile for them. And the problem with the hourly rate is that when you're paid by the hour and you go out to market and you say, this is the service I provide and it's X pounds an hour, what your client is thinking is it worth it for me to pay this person to do an hour of this work when actually I could do the work instead? Because often when it comes to a bookkeeping service, that's the alternative. They think they can do it themselves, whether they can do it to the level that you can do it, whether they have the expertise and background and they're not going to make the mistakes and all of that stuff. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking, this is a task, I have a piece of software and it can do it for me if I type things in the right way. They're just thinking, is it worth me spending £25 an hour or £35.67 an hour to get somebody else to do this for me instead? And if you're having that conversation, you're in a really difficult place to start with. That's why we need to think about fixed pricing and we need to be really clear for the client about the outcomes, not from like a scaremongering point of view, not from a point of view of, well, if you don't do it right, these bad things are going to happen, but from a point of view of, I'm an expert here, maybe you niche, and we can talk about that a little bit more, but you might have a very specific understanding of their industry or the systems and tools they use in their business. You might know it better than them. There might be a tool they use, a booking system or something that you're an absolute expert in. Maybe you've done that in other businesses as well. And because of those connections that you can make or the insights that you have, you can give them really great data, information that allows them to make better decisions about their business. Business owners are commercial. They want to grow, they want to earn more money, they want to save money where they can. And for you to be the expert looking in and saying, I'm not here as an admin role, I'm not here just as a body double for you so you get some extra time. I'm actually here because I can give you the insights that are going to grow your business. That is where your value is. So that's why we talk so much about fixed pricing, because it isn't about the hours you spend. And you know this because you're seeing AI coming into technology. You're seeing automations happen. All of these things are reducing the amount of time that you spend working for the client. What you need to be doing is still providing those same outcomes, that checklist of features of the bookkeeping service that every single bookkeeper can provide, because we've all done the exams. We all know how to pass that exam paper. We've all got that same base knowledge. But you can also do something based on the expertise, the background, the experience, the unique parts of you that you bring to this role as a finance lead. And that's what we want to package up and sell. The tick box stuff will always be there, whether it's from you being paid £35.67 an hour, whether it's from another bookkeeper who's going to undercut you, because there'll always be someone that can undercut you. Those things are still there. But the value is going to come when you're able to help the business owner to run their business better. So let's move from admin into this role where we become a finance lead. So you've heard that the median and the mean average hourly rate have changed, which is great news. But when we looked at the data, we also still have these real clusters around the £26 to £30 an hour, or actually the £21 to £25 an hour, which is immediately way less than I might have been charging. It is 10 years ago. So I want you to know that, I was a UK bookkeeper. 10 years ago, I was charging £25 an hour. So if you're there, please stop right now and go away and have a real think about what you need to do in pricing in 2026. Jo and I work on this exercise with bookkeepers, and actually we have a spreadsheet which you're very welcome to download. It works out your minimum hourly rate, and a really good way to do this, you can do this just on a piece of paper, is to think about what you need to be earning as a family, as a household budget. What do you need to be taking home after tax every day? And I can reverse engineer this with you in just a few steps. So let's do that right now. You need to have a look at what you want to be taking out of the business every month. Then you think, okay, well, actually, maybe I'd like to take a little bit more out of the business every month because I have goals and ambitions and dreams too. That's the whole reason you're running a business, right? It's got to be good, not just like baseline. Then what we do is we add back profit to that amount. So if you're in the UK, maybe that's 20%. Let's add back some tax to that profit because that's the money we're taking out. And then we're going to add on some expenses. So we've all got these overheads of running the business. So we're going to add those back on. And then it's rough and ready, but you're going to have an idea of a turnover figure that you need to be generating in your business. What you can do then is work out, well, how many hours am I going to be working over the course of a year? And then you can divide those numbers and you can work out what does that this is your absolute minimum hourly rate. Not because I want you to charge an hourly rate, but because I want you to have a proxy for time. And that's what all of these stats are around. It's just about, we naturally come back to, what am I being paid per hour? So it's really good to be able to benchmark yourself against that figure, because that helps you then to build up packages when you're looking at, what am I giving the clients here? What software needs to be included? What are the extras, the expertise, the guidance, the KPIs, the dashboards, the conversations that I can have with the clients that can add more value to this? And then we can package it up. And what Jo and I really teach in the Bookkeepers Collective is how you productize this service offering. So we move away from that hourly rate, admin focused bookkeeping checklist, and we move into being a finance lead for our clients' businesses, offering a package, which means the clients know what they're going to get. And in terms of their confidence and being able to make the decisions, they can do that. They know what this is going to be as an investment for them, and they know what they're going to get on the other side. And you have real belief as well that there's a kind of end point every month. You know what you need to be delivering to them. That helps you to plan and schedule and have great workflows. You can map all of this out, but also it helps you to know you have the confidence that you've got X number of clients paying you X pounds a month. And if you're not at that target yet of where you need to be, you can set out the actions for yourself, the strategy to get there. What do I need to do in terms of marketing, conversations with people, actual sales calls to get those clients? So we can start to put KPIs and stats against that to understand how many conversations we need to have each month. It all joins up. So start with that proxy for your minimum hourly rate, and then you can start to work backwards to what those packages need to look like. I think the most uncomfortable truth for me from this data was that so many bookkeepers, despite us banging the drum for pricing for such a long time, and we're not the only people talking about this, there's lots of content out there in the bookkeeping and accounting world around how to price appropriately and what the actual outcomes are that you're selling. The real challenge that we're seeing is that many bookkeepers are still pricing as if they're interchangeable. And maybe you're listening to this and thinking, I don't know how to differentiate myself from another bookkeeper. And it is that differentiation, the bit where you really dig in to understanding your own background, your expertise, your experiences that you're going to bring to those clients so that you can move into that finance lead role. If you're just offering that hourly rate admin level service, you are going to be seen as interchangeable with anyone else, anyone on any website where there is a list of people, and they're going to pick the person who is the lowest price because it looks to the client who isn't an expert in what you do. It looks to the client like you're going to do exactly the same thing as somebody else. So my goal for you for 2026 is to really understand what it is that makes you different and exceptional. In fact, I want you to become the finance lead, and I want you to understand the value that you bring so you can really build that confidence. I think confidence is the most important finding that we've had from this survey. And there's a lot of information here about how confident people feel benchmarked against whether they've been in business for a certain amount of time or whether they're a certain size of practice. The key question that we asked here is, if you go onto a sales call, how confident are you on a scale of 1 to 5 that you're actually going to win the work? I think 1 is not confident at all. You can go and look at the report, and 5 is very confident that I'm going to win the work. We slice and dice this based on all sorts of different measures. But what we learned is that the people who were rating themselves as more confident at winning the work on a sales call, when we asked them what their minimum hourly rate was, now this, like I said, doesn't mean that they're charging an hourly rate, it's just a proxy. But the people who said that they were like a 4 out of 5 were charging almost £40 an hour. Whereas the people who were rating themselves at a 1 or 2 out of 5 in terms of confidence that they would win the work on a sales call were charging around £23. So there's actually, it feels counterintuitive, doesn't it? But there's actually a correlation between the people who are charging more and their actual confidence of winning on the sales call. And I don't know whether that's because they're pricing fixed packages rather than by the hour, but there's definitely something in that in terms of if you get the pricing right because you believe in the value that you are giving the client, you're going to feel more confident going out there having a sales conversation. Because of that confidence, the client is going to see, yeah, this person, they really are going to make a difference to my business, and they're going to feel confident too. And we were talking about the trust of the small business owner making the investment and knowing it's going to create a good outcome for their business. If they can see that, of course, they're more likely to say yes. So pricing, I think we have this big fear that if we increase our prices, particularly to legacy clients who've maybe been with us forever, and we're like, oh, they're so good at recommending other people to us and things like that, we're afraid to raise their prices. But actually, if there's real value and they're seeing the real value, they're going to be happy to pay the price because they want to have that. Maybe there's a rescoping piece of work that you do to offer them something else, support them more, ask them questions about what's happening for them, what are their plans for 2026, and how can you help them to achieve those plans. If you understand that and you're having a conversation, business owner to business owner across the table as an exchange, rather than you just being told this is your list of stuff to do, which is a very much of a sort of employee way of working. If you go in and lead and say, I'm going to lead your finance function here, I'm going to help you to achieve the things that you want to be doing, and you've told me that this and this are your plans, let me help you to map out how we get there and what actions we might want to take, or maybe there's a financial advisor or somebody I need to introduce you to support you with those plans. That can be really helpful as well. Something else that we learned when it came to the confidence of winning the work on the sales call, we prepared this report in partnership with our partner Go Proposal, and we asked people whether they were confident in winning the work on the sales call, and we also asked people whether they were Go Proposal users. And this was really fascinating, and I'm very pleased to say supports our belief in Go Proposal as a software tool as well, because I think that having a framework, having something that can give you confidence to price is a brilliant way to almost sort of automate the system of pricing and not make it emotional. What we want to do is take out those fears that we have, or those limiting beliefs about money, or the stories we have from our childhood, or the things we were told as we were growing up. And we want to make this a black and white, like, this is the price conversation. If we can do that because we've designed a package, or because we're using a proposal tool like Go Proposal, we say, well, this is what it costs, it's much easier to have the sales conversation, and you're going to feel more confident going into it. So what we learned when we asked our community about their confidence on sales calls is that if they were using Go Proposal, and we said, how confident do you feel on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being low, 5 being high, of winning the work on the sales call, the people who use Go Proposal said they're at 3.94. So really high. The people who have used Go Proposal in the past and for some reason have moved away, they rated themselves at 3.75. So they're quite confident too. Maybe they could earn a bit more or feel more confident in the sales calls if they were to return to Go Proposal. And the people who were aware of Go Proposal but not a user, not a previous user, they were rating themselves at 3.65 out of 5. So there's a really clear correlation between the confidence going into a sales call, because that's where all this worry around pricing comes from, isn't it? It's our belief in being able to sell at that price. And what we're seeing is if you have a tool, a framework, a structure, a piece of software like Go Proposal, you're going to feel more confident going into a sales call, and the numbers have shown that, which is brilliant. And that can be a really good starting point for you if you're thinking, I need to do something about my pricing, I don't know where to start. Go and get a free trial of Go Proposal and try it out for yourself. I think there's this fear with the idea of being more confident. Maybe we resist being more confident because we see people that we believe are confident and we see arrogance. And I think that so often there's this fine line between confidence and arrogance, and it can make us sort of hold back. I don't want to be that, I don't know, I'm going to be really stereotypical here, but this kind of bolshy person. That isn't me. I want to be different and more reserved or more modest or whatever. But confidence isn't about like a personality change. Confidence is just about really understanding the value of what you do. And we've covered a lot of the things that you can be doing in your service to do more than the tick box exercises of bookkeeping. I think that confidence is something that's learnt through repetition and frameworks and sitting down and understanding what it is about you that makes you different and better and an expert and somebody that people trust. If you can see that for yourself, or if you can't do it, ask someone else to tell you, what am I an expert in here? What do you really trust me with? That's going to give you a level of belief. And we've all got to work on this. So something Jo and I are working on all the time. Like, that confidence isn't just this like level of like, yeah, everything's great. I know it's not. I know it doesn't always feel easy. But if we can give ourselves those reminders, yes, this is really valuable, what I'm doing really makes a difference, we start to sort of build that into ourselves. So confidence is really the focus for 2026 as we move into that finance lead role. What we've got to remember is that pricing has to be commercial. Let me talk to you about something else that bookkeepers are doing, which I think is really commercial, particularly in our community within the Bookkeepers Collective. Jo and I have focused on niching for a long time, and let me tell you why, because some of the data in the report comes back to niching as well. Niching is, I think, sometimes a bit of a dirty word. I think that sometimes people think, well, why on earth would I rule out all of these particular potential clients for myself? And I don't think that niching is about ruling out clients. When you're a small business, and I think many people listening to this won't be part of a large practice. I think you'll be a team of 1 to 5. When you are working in a very small team, the best way for you to be an expert and create all of that value and expertise and differentiation that we're talking about is to really go deep on the things that you are exceptionally good at. And we do all have these. If you do a SWOT analysis for yourself and you understand your strengths and weaknesses and all of that, you will be able to see this. And again, maybe someone can help you with this. But if you can understand the things that are about you from your training, and it might be something specific you've done in your bookkeeping training, maybe there is something technical that you're very, very good at. But remember, we don't want to be just replaced by the person who can undercut us, who also has that qualification. I think that this is much more about those sort of skills and experiences that wrap around the qualifications that we've done. So there will be things from your life. There'll be communities you're a part of. There'll be organisations you've worked in before, industries you've worked in, interests, hobbies, things you're aware of that make you really different and really valuable for a certain type of business. I really put Jo on the spot at the Bookkeeper Summit last year when I asked her to talk about one of her first clients, or her sort of introduction to the beauty industry as her niche, because she was having a conversation with her beautician who was telling them how difficult their relationship was with their accountant. And she thought, you know what, there's an opportunity here for me to support this particular group of business owners who are afraid and who don't know how to get the best out of all of these fancy, expensive machines that they've bought for their salons because they're sat idle most of the time. And Jo was sort of really tuned into that type of business and what they needed. And she was able to design a bookkeeping service around that. For me, it was the creative industry. My husband's a creative. So actually going into that industry, I already had a network. I had an awareness of the kinds of work that they would be doing and how that might be structured in terms of how the client would be paying for that, or their client would be paying for that, and the costs and what their overheads would look like. I knew the terminology, I knew the software that people were using, and I think sometimes those things can be enough to differentiate you. Nobody wants to work with a bookkeeper who goes, what's that? When you're going through the bank rec or the bank account and you're thinking, I've never even heard of that word. What does that even mean? They want you to be kind of fluent in their industry or their language if that's something that's important to them. So really focusing in on your experiences, that broader environment that you've trained as a bookkeeper or finance professional, or do you know what? Something completely different. We've got bookkeepers in our community who've been driving instructors and nurses and chiropodists, so there's something that you're bringing that's unique to somebody else. And if you decide to choose an industry to niche in, or if you just decide to niche in something else, maybe it's a size of business, maybe it's businesses going for investment, maybe it's businesses that are, building software, or who are going after some particular grant funding that's really popular at the moment, if you can understand the environment that they are operating in and you can become a real expert at that, it means that you can make decisions better. That's what this comes down to. You're a small team. It might just be you, And you need to know that you're making the right decision. And when we're open to any client who comes along and knocks on the door and saying, yes, okay, no problem, I'll adapt to what you need and you need and you need, you start creating this quite overwhelming set. I know you can structure it. I know you can systemize it and you can have a workflow, but you're going to have loads of different workflows that look different. Every time you go to a different client, you're like, oh, that's the one I have to log in on that software for. And what we want to do is remove that resistance to efficient workflows. We want to create it so that we have a really simple to follow system that can be replicated so that you can use all of these automations and AI tools, or maybe leverage people in your team in the future so that you can be more efficient at delivering that service. When we're thinking about, we've been talking about profit margins, when you're thinking about profit margins or return on your time invested, all of these small quick wins can make a massive difference. So the best way for you to be efficient is to have I can't say the word, for you to have a process that you can replicate across all of your clients. So that starts with decisions about workflows, or decisions about the software you're going to use for this kind of client, or making decisions about how you're going to market your business, making decisions about the price point of the package for your bookkeeping services. There are some clients who are going to need a lot more support, who are going to want you to be on the phone whenever they need them. They're going to want dashboards and spreadsheets every week and things like that. There are other clients who want to know that a certain thing is done every month, and that's all they want to know. So if you can understand the type of client you're working with and design the package for them at the price point that you feel is appropriate and reflects the value trade, the value exchange that you're making here, and the systems that you're going to need to create it, you can make decisions faster. And that's going to help you with every aspect of running your business. It will help you with pricing, it will help you with workflows, it will help you with scaling, it will help you with marketing, it will help you with sales, because you'll go in and you'll have the right conversations. And this is so important for you when it comes to confidence. These are the things that you're going to be able to say, yeah, I absolutely know inside out what my service looks like, what the outcomes are for you as a client, why this is going to help you. And because you have that belief, you're going to be so much more confident in selling it. So niching is something that is really worth considering, even if it doesn't mean you build your whole business around that, but it's just something you know behind the scenes in terms of the way that you make decisions about the way you run the business. So we found some interesting stats in terms of niching and pricing, and there are some correlations between the prices that are being charged by bookkeepers who do niche. What we found is that bookkeepers who niche charge about 14% more per hour when we look at the hourly rate comparison than bookkeepers who don't have a niche. So you can go and read all about that in the report. I think it's quite compelling. There's a good argument there for choosing a niche, whether you're public about that or not, and using that to drive the decisions and the pricing and everything else that you're building your business around. If you want to learn more about pricing, head over to our website. I've linked underneath this video or this podcast, if you're listening to the audio, the link to the pricing survey. There's lots of data in there around the types of bookkeepers who are pricing in certain ways. There are some ideas about how you can change your pricing structure going into 2026. If you haven't repriced for a long time, we're in a new year. This is the time to go away and have a look at your pricing. I really encourage you to even just reflect on it. Is this working for me? Am I going to achieve my goals if I'm pricing in this way? And what do I have to do for 2026 so that I can achieve my goals? Of course, you're going to deliver the outcomes to the client. Maybe there's more you can be delivering for the client, but how are you going to achieve your goals in business as well in 2026? Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode of the Bookkeepers Podcast.